Back in May of 2010, 23-year-old sex worker Shannon Gilbert went missing after calling 911 and reporting that someone was following her. The police searched for Gilbert's body for over 6 months, until they finally found a body on December 10th of 2010. But there was a problem. The body was not Gilbert's. So they continued on with the search, but within days of each other, they found bodies of 3 other women, all wrapped in burlap. All petite young women, sex workers with green or hazel eyes. They knew they had a serial killer on their hands. By 2011, another 6 bodies were found, and noted to be possibly connected to the 4 women previously found in 2010. Shannon Gilbert's body was finally found in December of 2011. Now it's over 13 years later, but this past week, a man was finally arrested for 3 and is the prime suspect for the 4th of the Gilgo Beach Murders.
On this episode of Cauldron Convos, we're going to take it from the very beginning, going through all of the cases of the missing individuals and what led the police to finding the murderer.
My name is Kayla, this is Xenu, and we are Cauldron Convos, baby.
Welcome. We'd like to thank all of our subscribers.
Cheers.
For continuing to subscribe.
Also, I'm just going to call out my weird sunburn right now, and I don't think my choice of shirt helped the sunburn situation. If you are new to this channel, make sure to subscribe because we post videos here every single week on this spine-chilling paranormal and true crime topics that you definitely want to hear, especially because we're leading up to Halloween, kind of. I know it's kind of early, but you know what? It's never too early
for Halloween.
Spook.
If Home Goods is selling Halloween shit, we are here.
True. Well, we're always here, but I'm sure Home Goods has like one Halloween relevant thing in their stores at all times.
Yeah, probably.
Like one thing in the clearance that's just lingering there. One of those gnomes. Also, make sure to follow us on Instagram because we're going to be posting a lot more. You can find me at Kayla Cauldron, and you can find Almighty Xenu at Almighty Xenu. We post photos.
It's not an ego thing. Trust me, it's not an ego thing.
We post photos of searching for Sasquatch and holding seances, looking for crop circles in the middle of cornfields. So if that's interesting, make sure to follow us.
Yeah, thanks. If you're new here, please also join our Discord. We have active conversations. We're always taking suggestions.
Always
and
sending articles.
Sending articles, dude. We've got great members.
So let's go way back to 2010 in Long Island and how they kind of found out that there was a serial killer lingering, I guess.
Lurking.
On May 1st, 2010, 24-year-old sex worker Shannon Gilbert went missing. Shannon was at a client's house, but it was reported that he kicked her out of the house. The police searched for Shannon along Ocean Parkway near the remote beach towns of Gilgo and Oak Beach in Suffolk County. But they didn't find anything until December, as stated earlier, but this body wasn't even of Shannon Gilbert's. That's where they were like, uh-oh, we got a problem on our hands. Remains were later identified as Melissa Barthelemy. Barthelemy was 24 when she went missing on July 12th of 2009. She was living in the Bronx and was an escort through Craigslist. On the night she went missing, she was with a client, and she deposited $900 into her bank account. And 1 week after she went missing, and lasting weeks, her younger sister named Amanda received a series of, quote, vulgar, mocking, and insulting calls from a man who may have been the serial killer using Melissa Barthelemy's cell phone. The caller asked if Amanda, quote, was a whore like her sister, which is so disturbing. I feel so bad for this girl. Police actually discovered 3 additional bodies while searching the scene for further evidence. The bodies of the 4 victims, Maureen Brainard, Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello, were found approximately 500 feet from each other. It's crazy to think that all of these bodies were buried so close to each other and they just would have never been found unless Shannon Gilbert went missing and called the police.
Yeah.
They were just missing, and I don't know if it was because they were sex workers that people weren't looking very hard for them, or
that's what I'm assuming.
What the case was, but it's so sad because there's so many missing people every day, literally every day, and I wonder how many of them are actually related to serial killers, murders, and we just don't know about it. You know? Like, there's so many people that are still missing. Like, every day on the news we see something.
Yeah, they do that missing thing on the news every day. It's like before, like in between commercials, they have like, have you seen this person?
Yeah. Then we have Megan Waterman, and Waterman was 22 and went missing on June 6th of 2010. She was placing advertisements on Craigslist for her escorting services. At the time of her disappearance, she was staying in a motel in Hauppauge, New York, 15 miles northeast of Gilgo Beach. Waterman was a mother of one and became a victim of sex trafficking, which is so upsetting. They're all so young, and it's just so disturbing. Then we have Maureen Brainard Barnes. Maureen was 25 when she disappeared and was last seen on July 9th of 2007, saying that she planned to, quote, spend a day in New York City. She also worked as a paid escort and posted listings on Craigslist, and she was doing so to pay the mortgage on her house. She had been out of the sex industry for 7 months, but returned in order to pay her bills after receiving an eviction notice. Shortly after her disappearance, Maureen's friend named Sarah Carnes received a phone call from a man on an unfamiliar number. The man claimed that he had just seen Maureen and that she was alive and staying at a, quote, whorehouse in Queens. He refused to identify himself and could not tell Sarah the location of the house. He told Sarah he would call back and give her the address, but never called again. Sarah said that man had no discernible New York or Boston accent. And like many of the victims, Maureen was petite, a 4'11" tall woman and 105 pounds. Amber Lynn Costello was 27 and also a sex worker who went missing on September 2nd of 2010. That night, she reportedly went to meet a stranger who had called her several times and offered $1,500 for her services. Her family believed that she was in a residential drug rehabilitation center at the time, and so she was not immediately reported missing when she stopped responding to messages and phone calls. Costello's drug addiction began when she was a teenager. She had been sexually assaulted by a neighbor when she was just 6 years old. She was 4'11" as well and weighed approximately 100 pounds and had also been strangled. These 4 women were all found in December of 2010 and are often referred to as the Gilgo Four. But in 2011, more bodies were discovered, within 2 miles and to the east of those found in December of 2010.
Now, I think something important to note is that these other bodies were kind of found in a different manner. So the Gilgo Four were all found hog-tied in camouflage burlap sacks, which the other bodies were not.
So Jessica Taylor was 20 years old when she went missing on July 1st of 2003. On July 26, 2003, her naked and dismembered torso, missing its head and hands, were discovered 45 miles east of Gilgo Beach in Manorville, New York. So quite a ways east of Gilgo Beach. Taylor's torso was found atop a pile of scrap wood at the end of a paved access road off Halsey Manor Road, just north of where it crosses the Long Island Expressway. Plastic sheeting was found underneath the torso, and a tattoo on her body had been mutilated with a sharp instrument. In March of 2011, partial remains of Jessica Taylor were found along Ocean Parkway. And the next body was found in 2011, and it was of Valerie Mack. And Valerie Mack was 24 and living in Philadelphia and working as an escort when she went missing in 2000. Like many of the victims, she was small in stature at approximately 5 feet and weighed approximately 100 pounds. Mack's partial remains were discovered in Manorville on November 19, 2000, but were not identified as hers at the time. But then a head, right foot, and hands were found on April 4th of 2011. These were Valerie Mack's, but at the time they did not know they were hers, so she was dubbed Jane Doe number 6. In 2011, when they found her body, they didn't know she was Valerie Mack. They didn't find out it was hers until May 28, 2020, when police announced that the remains had been identified as Valerie Mack, who had been last seen by family members in the spring or summer of 2000 in the area of Port Republic, New Jersey. Her right foot was cut off above the ankle, and police think it's possibly to conceal a tattoo, an identifying mark. It's interesting that tattoos are, could be used for that. I guess it's used for that as well as used to identify killers. So in addition to Valerie Mack's body being found on April 4th of 2011, but at the time she was just referred to as Jane Doe number 6, police also found the remains of an unidentified female toddler and an unidentified Asian person. This was all on that day, which is kind of crazy. Like, imagine how, disturbing that would be.
Well, I feel like there's 2 separate killers here. One's dumping them in the burlap sacks, and then one's dumping them just in a pile.
But isn't it weird that Jane Doe number 6 was 100 pounds and very petite? And being 100 pounds is very, I feel like very rare. The female toddler was about 250 feet away from Jane Doe number 6. And the unidentified Asian person, the victim was found wearing woman's clothing, so may have possibly been a transgender woman. But just a week later, on April 11th of 2011, more remains were found. These partial remains that were found were dubbed Jane Doe number 3 and often nicknamed Peaches due to a peaches tattoo. The same day on April 11, 2011, a human skull and several teeth were recovered at Gilgo Beach. Remains were dubbed Jane Doe number 7 or sometimes referred to as Fire Island Jane Doe. On May 9, 2011, police speculated that because of similarities in the cases, Valerie Mack, who at the time was unidentified, and Jessica Taylor may have been murdered by a second separate killer. So they also, support your theory or claim that this is a different killer. They're not using burlap sacks. They're also dismembering the bodies. And if I can remember correctly, the Gilgo Four, they weren't dismembered, correct?
No, they were not.
They were not
tied up very intricately.
But it is interesting that she was 5 foot. I guess could be a coincidence.
It could be a coincidence, but I mean, that's a pretty out there coincidence. The more interesting thing is that this guy who thought he got away with it stopped killing when they found the first body, and then he hasn't killed since. So he probably thought, oh, I'm in the clear. Even
if he did all of them, if these people were missing in different time periods, like I feel like maybe he changed the way he was doing it.
Well, a lot of serial killers, they go on breaks and stuff. They take breaks, like Jeffrey Dahmer, right? Like we watched that whole show. It's like they're not always in the need to kill someone. It's like an urge. So he could have been active in the 80s or the 90s, early 2000s, and then taken a break and then,
started
got
up
back
again.
into it.
And also he was doing it when his family were like out of town. So maybe they just didn't go out of town for a while.
Yeah, he was pretty methodical. I mean, he bought the phones that he was using, how they eventually traced him. We'll get into that in a little. But he bought the phones on CCTV. Like they were showing it on the news this morning. Like at the T-Mobile store. You could tell. They didn't say it was T-Mobile, but it was pink, so I know it was T-Mobile. So, like, he wasn't that clever. Like, he could have worn a mask and gone to Walgreens or something and then not used your extra bucks number.
Yeah. Glad you know what to do. I'd be too cheap. I'd be like, I need the coupons.
Could you imagine the anxiety of like murdering people
like
10 years ago? I would not be able to live.
On September 20th of 2011, police released composite sketches of 2 of the unidentified victims, dubbed the Asian Male and Jane Doe number 6, whose remains had been found in March and April of 2011, as well as photos of jewelry found on the remains of a female toddler and her mother, Jane Doe number 3, found on April 4th and 11th, respectively. I'm kind of shocked that the person didn't remove the jewelry. I guess because then the jewelry could be tied to them, found.
Yeah, I feel like serial killers oftentimes take tokens, and that's why they're really raiding the shit out of this guy's house.
Yeah.
But, I don't know.
Yeah. And one of the set of remains found in Nassau County on April 11th was later identified as the mother of the toddler. And these remains were linked through DNA testing to a set of severed legs found in a garbage bag on Fire Island 15 years earlier on April 20th, 1996. So
fuck?
It was all the way back in the late 90s. So this person, well, if it is the Rex and if it is, well,
they said Rex has lived in that house his entire life.
That's true.
He bought it like in the 80s from his parents.
So in 2011, when they found Shannan Gilbert's body in a marsh at Oak Beach in December, they started winding down the investigation and actually called off all collaboration with the FBI. This is when some claim that the case entered a strange investigative limbo for years after this. Some other things happened, through the years that I wanted to mention. For example, 2012, Shannan Gilbert's mother tried suing Dr. Hackett. Did I even discuss Dr. Hackett yet?
No.
Okay, so Dr. Hackett was this guy who called Shannan Gilbert's family and basically said that like he had information for them, but then denied saying any of that. Like he said that he saw her or something.
Like he was just trolling her.
But like then someone was like, oh, he just likes like being a part of things and he likes like pretending like he's going to help or something. He was a suspect at one point. So I wanted to show this clip of Dr. Hackett trying to avoid confrontation of questions asked from Crime Watch Daily. Okay.
Chest pains. What about all the other girls? Ah! Jesus. As a mysterious.
He literally just faked, like, what?
What a goof.
What a guy.
I can't talk.
I mean, that's a way to get out of it. In 2013, the book Lost Girls, An Unsolved American Mystery was published, which is later known as the inspiration for the Netflix movie in 2020 called Lost Girls, which we saw.
We saw before, like years ago.
Yeah.
And then my brother said to her that she was going to be killed by the serial killer. And then I punched him in the face, and we had a fist fight. And it was Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving.
Fast forward to 2015, Suffolk County's police chief, James Burke, had some accusations of keeping the FBI at arm's length from the investigation. So the police of Suffolk County got a lot of heat for potentially trying to cover up something and also being like nasty in regards to talking about the sex workers who went missing, kind of like, shutting down the families, not really giving them equal treatment to others that would be missing that weren't sex workers. And Gilbert's family came forward with a sworn statement from a sex worker saying that she witnessed Burke, aka the Suffolk County police chief, using drugs and partying with sex workers on 2 occasions, and at least one of these took place in 2011. He resigned from his position as a result, and then he later went to prison for 2 years, I think for an unrelated thing. But isn't that crazy that the police chief of this, at the time, he was partying with sex workers and using drugs with them?
You mean to say
okay,
that the police are corrupt?
I saw in a video that someone said the best case scenario of the reason why he, didn't want to continue on with the case is because he didn't want this being exposed that he was just partying with sex workers and doing drugs and whatever,
that's pretty embarrassing.
Which was exposed. But the other theory is that he had something to do with it, or he had something to do with covering it up.
I mean,
for other reasons than just his reputation. In 2016, December specifically, Peaches and Jane Doe number 3 are positively identified as being the same person. Robert Biancavilla introduced a potential suspect. He was a carpenter who is currently in jail for crimes he committed in the 90s, 2 murders of sex workers by strangulation.
Something to note, I know that we are saying that it took a long time to identify these bodies, and that's because there's limited capability by the Suffolk County Police to do DNA testing, to my understanding. And it really wasn't until the FBI started to get involved to when they were able to start really positively identifying these people.
Now we're in 2018, and this is when Suffolk County Police Department got a new police commissioner.
There's a new cop in town.
Her name was Geraldine Hart.
I love a strong woman.
Yeah, and she was a former FBI agent herself, actually. Had 20-something years under her belt working as an FBI agent. And other commissioners usually tiptoed around the case of the Long Island serial killer or the Gilgo Beach murders. However, this new police commissioner, Geraldine Hart, was very willing to talk about it, very open, and very, wanting and adamant to find out what's going on. So she brought the FBI back in the case in 2018. In 2020, they uncovered the identity of Jane Doe number 6, who was one of the victims that was dismembered, and her name was Valerie Mack. Valerie Mack was actually able to be identified because her aunt's DNA from a genealogy site, which is pretty crazy. I know that DNA from genealogy sites are often used. In 2020, Hart also revealed a weird-looking belt with what looked like initials of HM. They found this belt and they did not think it was any of the victims, so they thought that it was associated with the killer and it was the killer's belt. But I haven't heard anything about this belt, in the past week or so related to Rex. So
Rex was binding the sex workers with belts.
Oh, I see. Okay.
With leather belts, but that's a separate note.
Okay. Now we're up to 2022, and this is when they released the 23-minute 911 call from Shannan Gilbert. In the call, you can hear a whole 23 minutes of Shannan Gilbert calling the police, saying someone's basically after her. You also hear Michael Pack, who was her security guard that drove her to the client's house. She continued to run through the marshes, and the police believed it was just a tragic accident and a case of drowning. Police still don't believe her death was related to the murder of other sex workers. Also, because she was the only one found on the south side of the parkway, the other women were found on the north side of the parkway. And she was found with her identification on her, cash on her, and there was no effort to conceal her body, which was not like the others that were found. What do you think? Do you think it was...
Yeah, I don't think I don't think that.
You think it was an accident?
Related. I mean, accidents happen, dude.
But it seems, why would she say, I guess besides a psychotic break or drugs or whatever,
Probably
why would
drugs.
She think that someone's after her? And what are the odds it's in basically the same area? And what are the odds that she's also a sex worker that was, I think, also pretty petite and young? Like, it just seems so weird to me.
Yeah, that's bizarre.
I don't know. Hopefully they find more information. Hopefully they just, dig
Catch
deeper.
these fuckers.
Dig deeper into Shannan Gilbert, because I don't know. I don't like it. I do feel as if she was someone that was wealthy and whatever, not a sex worker, that they would be looking into it a little harder.
Well, look at this whole, the Gabby Petito thing last year.
Yeah.
It's always minorities on the missing children thing on the news. It's hardly ever a non-minority person.
Yeah, but Gabby Petito's case, took over,
The
national
news.
headlines for, weeks. They were also, on social media, trying to influence
Pretty
and whatever,
present,
traveling and whatnot. So
The van life.
that was also part of it. But anyway, let's just jump to what's happening today. Let's get into the meat and potatoes, which I'm sure a lot of you have probably heard about it.
That's why you're here.
Especially if you're in New York, or from New York or whatever. On Friday, a man named Rex, I don't even know how to say his last name.
Heuermann.
And I don't even care to pronounce his last name correctly. But anyway, this man was charged with murder in the deaths of 3 of the 11 victims and is a suspect, probably did it in the 4th. I'm just saying that. My opinion.
This man is a true walking demon, a wolf in his sheep's clothing.
And it's shocking to a lot of people, and I guess scary, because he was just a 59-year-old architect at his New York City firm.
He was a family man. He had 2 kids and a wife.
Yep.
And they all lived in the same house. Can you imagine how traumatizing that is?
I know. So I guess let me just give some information on him before we get into what's going on with him.
He was actually arrested. They got footage of it. I'm sure you can find it online of him being arrested outside his New York City office.
Mm-hmm. And he's the owner and founder of the Midtown architecture firm RH Consultants and Associates, which counts Catholic Charities, New York City DEP sewage treatment, and American Airlines as its clients, according to its website. This is a random fact, but he's been years late in paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes and repeatedly filed lawsuits accusing drivers of injuring him in car accidents, according to a review of public records and court documents. He lived in the same house in Massapequa Park he was raised in, a few miles across the bay from the beach where bodies were unearthed more than a decade ago, according to a 2018 deposition. Which is kind of crazy that he just kept trying to file lawsuits accusing drivers of injuring him. If people dug deep, wouldn't you try to lay low?
Yeah, well, hiding in plain sight sometimes could be a strategy, I guess. He lived in the same house, in a very modest house, but he owned an architecture firm with these huge companies being he must be a pretty wealthy guy. Especially if he owed hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes. Damn.
Yeah, you have to be making some. Yeah, the house is very
dingy.
Yeah, no offense. I also found out that Rex has permits for 92 guns, Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney said at a news conference on Friday. He said, quote, he has a very large safe in which guns are kept. When asked if investigators have found all 92 guns, Tierney said, quote, we are continuing to execute search warrants, so I'm sure we will have that answer shortly. Maybe even by the time this is posted, they'll have that answer. But that's kind of crazy to have 92 guns. And none of them were killed via gun. What are you doing with those guns? Court documents detailed the 16 months of surveillance and investigation into Rex. He has been charged with the murders of Melissa, Megan, and Amber. He was held on no bail after his attorney entered a plea of not guilty on his behalf.
Now, did you hear what his defense attorney said? How he was hysterically crying, saying,
yeah.
I didn't do it. Yeah, it's crocodile tears. Shout out to the attorney for the families. He is styling.
Oh, yeah.
I love his outfit. Damn, if that attorney is coming after you, fucking hide.
Yeah,
Hide.
And the attorney of Rex was just appointed to him, which is kind of weird. Wouldn't Rex
What a hard
want
job.
a better attorney than the one?
Well, I mean, if he's rich, you'd think he'd be able to, buy in a nice attorney.
But anyway, let's dive into kind of how they even found out that Rex did it.
I love to put it into one sentence. They said, good old classic police work.
Yeah.
That's what they said on the news.
On March 14th, 2022, 2 months into the renewed joint investigation, investigators said they discovered a Chevrolet Avalanche that was registered to the suspect and seen by a witness during Costello's disappearance, according to court documents. This discovery led to a comprehensive investigation of defendant Heuermann, which consisted of over 300 subpoenas, search warrants, and other legal processes to obtain evidence, prosecutors said in the court documents.
Now, who drives the Chevy Avalanche? It's like the Escalade pickup truck. It's the ugliest thing on earth.
Authorities said cell tower records for Rex's personal cell phone and cell phone site locations showed that his personal phone and the burner phones were connected allegedly to the murders traveled between Massapequa, Long Island, and Midtown Manhattan, near where he worked at the same time of the victims' disappearances.
I found something interesting. The FBI profilers were able to figure out that it was probably a man that commuted from Long Island to New York City because they had got pings at Penn Station and they got pings on Long Island. So they're able to kind of build a profile and then go off of the car. And then go from there.
The investigators could also find no instance where Rex was in a separate location from these other cell phones when such a communication event occurred. Authorities said cell phone records and travel records showed that his wife and children were away from New York State on vacation during the time of the victims' disappearances. Authorities said further digging found that Rex had several other burner cell phones and email accounts, according to court documents. The suspect allegedly signed up for the accounts using fictitious names to search for sex workers and created a Tinder account that looked for dates or hookups, according to court documents.
Ew, I didn't hear that. Now, this bimbo was buying burner phones on camera, talking to an associate in the T-Mobile store.
Internet search records from the burner phones showed that between March 2022 and June 2023 indicated the suspect searched for sites, quote, related to active and known serial killers, the specific disappearances and murders of Maureen, Melissa, Megan, and Amber, and the investigation into their murders, as well as, quote, sex workers, sadistic, torture-related pornography,
other disgusting things.
Yeah. This supported our decision to keep our investigative focus secret, and we didn't want to give him any insight into what we were doing, Tierney said at a news conference Friday afternoon. Hair samples were found on the bodies of Barthelemy, Waterman, and Costello. However, authorities said they could not get a DNA match to a suspect at the time that they were discovered. A new analysis was done in 2020 on a hair sample found on Waterman's body using more advanced DNA and was able to determine that it came from a man and got more genetic information, according to Tierney. On January 26, investigators saw Rex throw a pizza box into a trash can in Midtown Manhattan, according to authorities.
Pop up that pizza pic.
A swab of leftover... Can you believe it was from January? Like, we're in July.
They've been tracking this guy for years.
That's crazy. Like, he had no clue.
Yeah,
like,
and
really
he looks like...
no clue.
Well, he looks like the type of guy that eat crust. He looks like a crust eater. I'm surprised he didn't eat his crust. He looks like a crust eater.
He also cried.
He looks like a crying crust eater. I'm just there. I said it. He doesn't look like he leaves a morsel behind.
But I feel like people that don't eat crust cry. I also
don't not eat crust.
Okay, but that's like calorie saving though. He does not look like he's on a calorie saving diet.
I'm a big crust guy. I love like the Domino's crust. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Okay, anyway, a swab of leftover crust in the box was taken by crime lab specialists and sent for DNA testing. On June 12th, authorities say the results came back showing that Rex's DNA was a match to the male hair found on Waterman's body. Among the evidence authorities said they collected from the subpoenas and search warrants were Rex's cell phone records. After narrowing down the pool, they searched for a connection to a green pickup truck a witness had seen the suspect driving, sources told CNN. Investigators found Rex, who matched a witness's physical description, lived close to the Long Island cell site, and worked near the New York City cell sites where other calls were captured. They then also obtained DNA from an immediate family member and connected it to DNA discovered on the body of one victim.
Yeah, when they go after these people, they like have rock solid cases. Good for these cops, dude.
Yeah.
They like really do their homework.
Yeah.
And it shows.
And recently, several box trucks were parked outside the house to take away items gathered for evidence. I saw them like putting in a file cabinet into that box truck.
Yeah, like 20 minutes ago.
I'm
right?
like, you get him. I hope he filed something. He definitely filed some crazy
he's
whatever.
A weird dude.
They also said that he was very organized. And also a lot of people, like true crime enthusiasts and also just like, I don't know, people that do this for a living. A few years back, they were noting that the guy who did this would be a man in his like 40s, 50s-ish, and he probably commuted into the city. He was probably very organized, successful. It took someone that was very organized, and I guess they said who but an architect and engineer is more organized, I guess, than that, which is kind of crazy. His next court date is scheduled for August 1st. So we might be doing some follow-up stuff.
Yeah, we can
on
do an
that
episode
if,
2.
if people are interested. I
Yeah, let's
guess.
see how people comment down below. Let us know if you're interested in this.
Yeah.
But that's kind of all the information we have now.
I guess something interesting that I saw was a TikTok of a woman that was an interior designer who was networking a lot in this space and who actually knew Rex, and her boyfriend thought he was like really weird, you know, only talked about himself, was like very cocky, arrogant. They just like did not like his vibe. But she met him at a bar at like a networking thing. You know, she would get business via architects and stuff like that because she was an interior designer. And in that conversation, asked him if he listened to podcasts. He then said no, he doesn't listen to podcasts, and asked her if she listened to podcasts. Like the only question he asked about her. And she said, you know, she used to listen to true crime podcasts. She stopped listening to them because they were scary, whatever. And he followed up on that by asking if she's heard of the Gilgo Beach Murders.
No.
She claims that in that conversation, he said that the Gilgo Beach murder or whatever was suspected of killing 4 women.
Oh, boy. I mean, granted, this is a TikTok.
Okay,
so it's
but
not...
like I believe her.
I believe her. I believe her.
And a lot of the comments are like, you need to go to authorities with this, because like even the fact that he said like the 4, like that's just crazy.
Yeah.
This weird, disgusting, sadistic thing
phone
against sex
calls.
workers. Like,
Yeah.
bro, you're a serial killer. Like
You're worse.
You're like the dirt of the dirt.
Speaking of serial killers, though, a little update. They found another body in the river in Chicago. We literally released that video last week.
But anyway, I hope that they put him in jail for a really long time. I hope that they get justice for the other woman, including Shannan Gilbert, because
And I hope he
all
drops the
started
soap.
with her. Thank you guys for listening to this episode of Cauldron Convos per usual. Make sure to subscribe if you aren't already, and leave a comment on what you want to see next. If you like these types of videos, you can also email us at cauldronconvos@gmail.com if you want to give us any advice, any critiques. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time here on Cauldron Convos. Bye!